Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, where we'll be looking ahead to Newbury, which will host a exceptional Group 1. For the milers, the Lockinge Stakes will be our focal point, and also the London Gold Cup, the prime handicap for 3-year-olds. Will they be handicappers by the end of the season? It always turns out to be a pretty good race indeed, but we've had plenty of good action over the last while or so, and we're kind of really getting our heads focused into the classics for the 3-year-olds, and we've had lots of classic trials as well. So good racing. This is the perfect time of year, really, where your form is getting really tested. So looking ahead to this weekend, looking forward to getting a lot of good quality horses out and action. So with that in mind, we will be kicking off with the Lockinge Stakes, which is coming up at 3:35, the 1 mile race. And it's been a conversation piece over the last few days about Inspiral and the ground. It's good to soft at present. So they have declared on good to soft ground, but there is rain about, which won't dispel the chances of Big Rock, who is in the race for the new trainer, Maurizio Guarneri. Normal jockey Aurélien Liamatre is on board. We've got Charon in there for Roger Varian, Poker Face, Royal Scotsman, Flight Plan, Real World, Witch Hunter. So it's a good enough looking field for this race. And I think I'll come to you, TC, first. It is very much, will Inspiral be ready in what's quite an early time of the year for her? Because we have seen that she just needs a couple of runs to get warm over the last couple of seasons. So although she is a talented mare, she comes with a bit of a warning, bit of a risk at the top of the betting.
Yeah, I love the Lockinge, and this is a fascinating renewal, isn't it? Favourites generally do well in this race, at least in recent years. 5 of the last 6 have gone in, and the only anomaly was when we had 5-1 joints at a race that was completely wide open. SBK traders aren't 100% sure who to put on top with Inspiral and Big Rock, and I can completely see why. You say there is rain about. I only live about 20-25 minutes away from Newbury. Right now, I literally Googled it before we came on the podcast, and it said it's raining currently. Blue skies out of my window. So I don't know how much rain they're getting, or if they're getting any at all. Tomorrow, Friday, looks like it's dry. Saturday, there is some rain, but I mean, this race is early enough in the afternoon. So I don't actually know how much rain they're going to receive between time of recording now on Thursday and the race. Good to soft currently, but it doesn't look too soft. We may get good ground. If we do, that could play against Big Rock. Now, of course, he's a very versatile horse. He could still win on good ground. Very speedy. We saw last year he can just bomb off from the front and no horse will catch him. I just have a slight concern that it's not going to be testing enough to see him at his A game. And if he's not at his A game, he may get beaten. Now, on the other hand, you've got Inspiral, who wants it quicker. Her best performance last year came in the Breeders' Cup on firm ground. And as you say, coming off the layoff. I think there are big question marks about both of them. They're obviously the most talented horses in the race. There's no doubt about that. But I'm instead going to take a shot on the solid option. At this stage, he's got to be the play, and that is Charon. Now, coming into this year, I thought, maybe he's a cut below the best. You know, last season in Group 1s as a 3-year-old, he didn't really trouble the judge. He was placed twice at the top level, but he seemed to see the backside of Paddington more often than not. But he's really taken a step forward this time around. His comeback was very impressive. And then I was at Sandown for the Group 2 mile event that he won last time. And I was really pleased with how he kicked on in the final furlong. Looked beaten for a short period of time in the straight, and then engaged overdrive and just drew clear of Poker Face. I don't really see that form being reversed. So he should be the best of the rest. If Big Rock and Inspiral don't perform to their best, maybe he'll win.
Yeah, look, Charon has got the 2 wins under his belt. This is 1,000 guineas winning trainer Roger Varian. Plenty to like about him. I suppose we won't mind the price as well. At the moment, SBK has him up at 92. You say, it's a hard race to price up. SBK go 2-1 joint favourites, Big Rock and Inspiral. I think it's quite short for both of them. And Ross, we've heard from this new trainer, Maurizio Guarneri, and I was quite taken by the headlines. He admits, and this has only comes a few days ago, he is still getting to know Magnificent Big Rock instead ahead of the Inspiral rematch. How much, knowing horses as you do, would a change like this take a horse to sort of reacclimatize, not sort of traveling a huge amount, but from a trainer's perspective, knowing the horse and knowing that they're absolutely spot on for a man who's trained for a long time, albeit not probably at the heights as Big Rock's former trainer. And he's got a lot of pressure now on his hands with this magnificent crop of horses that he's been sent, quite surprisingly.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hospital pass, isn't it, from the owners in some way? Because if he does a good job, he's only picking up on Christoph Head's work, and if he does a bad job, he's done a bad job. It's a piece of string, really, Jess, and every horse is going to be different. But you would think there are going to be subtle, maybe even bigger changes to work routine, how different trainers do it. The hay might well be different. The feed might well be different. The water constitution will certainly be different. They can all play into very, very minor changes. I see it as a massive negative, not so much in terms of the new trainer's ability, just in terms of the timing. It's so close to the start of the season. He's not had a winter to get to know this horse. And I'm completely with TC. One of my piece I wrote for, it was actually the video I did last week for SBK on Miller's Movers. George wanted me to say, what things would I change about racing? And Clerk of the Course reports was top of the list. Accurate ground descriptions. Now, if the ground description is accurate and the Met, there's only about 2 or 3 mils of rain going to hit the track today, the ground should ride quick enough. And I think that's a massive negative for Big Rock, because that standout performance came on soft ground, which is probably on the softest side of soft you can get. And it was a very enterprising ride as well. The matron went out very quick. I think they thought he'd gone too quick on the ground. He simply hadn't. So the good ground for him is a negative. I see where you're both coming from with Inspiral, but I think she's more consistent. We perhaps give her credit for. I know TC and myself both struggle with her at times, and that's normally when she's let us down when we've tipped her. But she's pretty adaptable with regards to ground. She's got a good enough record on her returns. I think she is. Big Rock and herself are the two most talented horses in this field. I'm dead against Big Rock, so that pushed me towards her. What are the negatives? Well, I mean, I think John Gosden's had his in good form, and he's had fillies running well, which I think is important. Obviously, Kieran Schumacher is the one changeable piece. He's coming in for Frankie Dettori because Frankie doesn't return from America to ride her, which will please some, no doubt. And Kieran's had a bit of stick so far this season, and I don't see it myself, really. I think he's growing into the job. Of course, he's going to take a little bit of time. Got stick for a ride yesterday. I mean, I don't know what they wanted him to do. The horse was clearly just not at his best. I'm quite comfortable with him. I think she is the best, if not the second best horse in the race. She's going to get her conditions against Big Rock. So I do like her. At a bigger price, Royal Scotsman really interests me. He's 14-1 with SBK. He's shaped like the best horse in the Guineas last year. You know, he got hampered early. He raced far too keen through the early stages and still ran into third, got pretty close. Went to the Irish Guineas, ran no sort of race. Then went to Ascot at St James's Palace, and his season had basically just fallen apart. He showed nothing there, and they up sticks with him. I couldn't find if there was a reason for that, an injury. If I have missed it, then I've missed it. But he's definitely a talented horse. And Charin, I completely see why TC has put him up. He's very solid. He is improving. But I'm convinced that Royal Scotsman has more ability, and he's 2.5 times the price. The Coles are starting the season really well, and particularly with their 2-year-olds. And I think 2-year-olds are a pretty good guide on your raw fitness levels, because, of course, they're not carrying any residual fitness into this season, and health, because if there's anything kicking around your yard, the 2-year-olds will find it first. So just at 14-1, I thought he was interesting. If you're with me with Inspiral, maybe the SBK place-only market is worth looking at. If you're not with me on Inspiral, maybe Royal Scotsman each way is the way you want to go.
Yeah, he's 14-1. It's really interesting. It kind of makes me 14-1 for Royal Scotsman. That is, it's really interesting. And the more I think about it, the more I think if both connections really knew what the ground was like and they were optimum for their horse, they wouldn't really be running against each other, would they? Because if John and Daly Gosden really believe it's going to be on the good side, and Big Rock really believes it's on the soft side, they really one wouldn't be in this race, because I just don't think it will be. It's either going to be right for one or right for the other, essentially what I'm saying. But Inspiral, I think they're hoping that it dries out, whereas Big Rock, they hope it's going to probably have a lash down a little bit more, albeit he has had form on sort of better ground. He was beaten by Ace Impact, which I think is a very good level of form, but he was also beaten by Inspiral. But that was sort of the midway point of the summer. I just don't know with her whether she might just need her run. She does get weight off Big Rock, which is pretty helpful considering she's the 6-time Group 1 winner. So every little counts when it comes to a race like this. It is fascinating. Just quickly before I'm going to say Big Rock, because I love his running style. And I just thought, TC, I remember this time last year when you tipped up Modern Games, you're absolutely convinced that the race that he had run, big smile coming back, memories of it, you're absolutely convinced that the race he had ran in America the time before was all wrong. The tactics were all wrong. Just tactically, do you think that this race will pan out perfectly as you imagine for the likes of Charon? And do you think that they will happily just go headstrong with Big Rock? Because it might just set up this race for the rest of them. I'm just wondering what the connections will do with him, because it looks like he's only got one style of running.
Yeah, so obviously when the ground gets a little bit more testing underfoot, good to soft and then soft heavy, etc., it's harder to make up ground in a race, especially when the leaders are going faster. Big Rock, he could be ridden super aggressively. I don't see why they wouldn't, because last year that's when we saw the best of Big Rock. I think that will really suit Charon, because he probably wants further. He probably wants a mile and a quarter. I imagine they'll step up in time with him. Therefore, if the pace does collapse, he's going to be the one that's staying on powerfully at the end. Poker Face, I think, is more of an out-and-out miler. That's where he's seen at his best. Inspiral, again, a mile seems to be her trip. So I think either Big Rock goes out aggressive and holds on, or Charon is the one to pick up the pieces. Now, that is saying if Inspiral isn't close to Big Rock. If it becomes more of a sprint, she's the one to beat, because she has that turn of foot.
It's really interesting to see how what Kieran Schumacher elects to do. He's coming out of stall 1. Big Rock's coming out of stall 9. There's just so many variables in this race. That's why I find it really fascinating. It might not be the most exceptional renewal we've ever seen, but we've got a lot of horses that have a lot of differences. And I think that something, it could throw up anything here. I'm all in for Big Rock. There are doubts, and I wouldn't want to back him maybe at 2-1. I would want him to be a bit bigger than that. So we'll see nearer close to the day what SBK might be. But as I say, 2-1 for Inspiral and Big Rock at the present. But Big Rock has got a bit of wow factor for me last time. And I think he's a younger horse improving, whereas Inspiral, we just don't know. There are too many question marks in my mind as a 5-year-old early on in the career, new jockey. And I'm just worry that sometimes she can just be a little bit tardy early part of the year. So seems like we've all got a different of opinion. So Inspiral for Ross, I should say, at 2-1. I'm with Big Rocket. Want it to be a bit bigger than 2-1, please. And Charon at 9-2 for Ross, and a bit of a place play. Those markets will be available on SBK for Royal Scotsman at 14-1. Right, we'll go on to the London Gold Cup. As I said, the handicap in all but name. I think this has got such a good feel to it. For me personally, I had a length of my arm for this race. I really found it difficult to sort of cut it up into those that I would sort of land on. Aidan O'Brien's won it last year. He sends over Shanti, bolted up on seasonal reappearance at Leopardstown, made a mockery of his handicap mark. King's Gambit for Harry Charlton, who's made an exceptional start to his season as sole licence holder. Goodwood Odyssey for David Manuzia, another man going from strength to strength. Fighter Command for the Gosdens. And then we've got plenty of others. As I said, Ross, first for you, 14 field. You probably had to warm into the flat, but as flat races go, this is a pretty good one.
Yeah, no, I like this race, Jess, and my one big tip would be watch this race back a couple of times and do so with a notepad to hand, because it will throw up plenty of winners. I'm still a little bit sore having tipped Desert Hero for this race last year. He got beat off 94, given what he went on to do. That does show that, you know, there's some very good horses that just won't win this. So keep your eyes open. You could have come up with plenty that you fancy here. I've got 2, both at 11-1 with SBK. Briony for Alan King caught my eye in September at Sandown. Was posted quite wide. Went off big odds, something like 40-1 SP. Posted wide, made quite a big move through the sort of mid part of the race, which couldn't sustain, but still ran well, finished 3rd. Then went on a month later to Kempton on the all-weather, over 7 furlongs. Again, ran well at a pretty decent price. Only went down by a neck to Matsuri for Roger Varian, who's quite well regarded. He's got a Derby entry, was well supported on that occasion, and he had to work hard to fend off Briony. Then had a break and returned at Kempton in April up to a mile. Wasn't a deep race, but did it in really good style. Got to the front early enough and was quite tenacious and stayed well. And then went to Sandown next time out and just got run down by Goodwood Odyssey. But I thought Ross O'Ryan was in front quite early on in the piece, probably not by design. I think he got stuck there, got into sort of protracted duel some way out. Goodwood Odyssey got hampered, and I think actually that worked to Kieran Schumacher's advantage because he came quite late, and Briony, son of Cloth of Stars, couldn't quite repel that challenge. Gets a £6 pull at the weights with that horse now, is twice the odds, so I thought Briony was quite interesting. And then the other one comes from the Convivial Maiden at York, which I know TC agrees is always a race that throws up plenty of good horses. There were two eye catchers for me in this race last year, Sissyfen and Spirit of Aklam. They finished 5th and 7th in that order, and they then went on to meet for their second run at Ayr. Sissyfen was a well-supported favourite on that occasion. Looked like he was going to absolutely waltz up, was going very nicely approaching the furlong marker, and Spirit of Aklam ran him down in really good style. Suggested a step up in trip would suit, and duly won cosily over a mile 2 on return at Ripon on soft ground. Was really quite free for the early stages, opened up quite a gap and was perhaps hanging on a little bit at the death. But I think in this better race, a stronger pace, Joe Mason, who's riding really well, will be able to find a little bit of room and settle him a little bit better. He will stay further, I think, in time, and I like that in this sort of race because they will probably go strong and you'll need to stay this trip well. So Spirit of Aklam and Briony, both at 11 to 1 would be my two against the field.
Yeah, both 11 to 1, and there is a 25% winnings boost on this race with SBK. It is with a max bet of £10, so not too bad. Someone can do the maths for me. 11 to 1 win there with a 25% winning boost. That's a bit of work for you quickly, Ross, where we speak to TC. That, I think it does sum up the race nicely. Like, you've got horses, I think, in all shapes and sizes that are probably always going to have been better 3-year-olds, and that's what I love about this race is that we're sort of, you could see last year that this was going to be the type of race that would have been optimum for them. So how did you find working this out? Because they've got some quite well handicapped sorts in this against some that might have just got into this off pretty harsh ratings.
Yeah, this is always one of my most anticipated races of the year, I have to say. Obviously, outside of the Group 1s, this is probably the race that everyone's eyes will be on out of the 3-year-olds this campaign, at least in the early part of the season. So I'm always trying to find that next time test, that next Headman or Defoe or any other winner of this race, Bay Bridge, etc. This year, it looks like there are a handful that could easily take a step forward and be proper group horses in the future. Shanti is obviously the horse to beat. But I say that with a little bit of a caveat. If he wasn't trained by Aidan O'Brien, I don't think he'd be favourite. And therefore, should you really bet him at 7 to 2? I don't think so. I mean, last year, he looked very raw. He was a bit backwards. He didn't really want the mile or any kind of sprint trip. So I can understand why he wasn't as effective. And yeah, he was super impressive on his comeback. He looked like, as he was going through the race, that he was a proper horse. I mean, he was travelling very strongly and kick clear. And the fact he actually did win first up for Aidan, considering his record with horses on their seasonal reappearance this year, has to be considered a huge positive. But he's gone up £10, and this is obviously a lot harder. So at a short price, of course he can win, but I don't think you can bet him. Shortish, relevant price. So therefore, I was looking down the list, and there are several others you can put up. The horse I landed on was Poneros, though, for Ammo Racing and Rafe Beckett. Now, he's an interesting horse because on debut, he was so impressive. He was professional. He went from the front that day, kicked clear of a horse called Salamanca, who's subsequently now rated 91. That performance alone suggests his current mark of 88 is pretty fair. Obviously, you can't judge Salamanca as a 91 rated horse at the time, but, you know, that's what we do in horse racing. It's the only thing you can do. So on that, he should be chucked in. However, his second run last year at Chelmsford, I thought he was a little bit disappointing. He hung a little bit to his left. He took a keen hold when ridden in behind horses. Maybe he didn't like the track. On RPRs, he took a step forward, but it wasn't the step forward that I was necessarily anticipating. However, he bounced right back to something like I was hoping on his comeback when he was second behind Harper's Ferry at Windsor. Harper's Ferry is obviously highly regarded, ran or was supposed to run in a Derby trial before being withdrawn at the start. Poneros tried to make all in that race. I don't think that's what you should be doing at Windsor. I think you should take a toe because it's very hard to quicken off the bend and then sustain your run all the way to the line. So the fact he wasn't beaten too far, I'd say, is a big positive. The vet also reported he was struck into during the race, so he may have had an excuse for not winning. And as I say, his mark is lenient. So if they're aggressive with him in the London Gold Cup, I think he'll go close, around 12-1 or 10-1 with SBK. I'm not quite sure of the price. But there is that caveat that he has thrown in one below par effort in 3 starts so far. So fingers crossed it's a going day for him.
Yeah, look, and I think the price is quite acceptable because of that. He's another one that's 11-1. Obviously, it's difficult to kind of price this up. I agree with you. I think Shanti at 7-2 based on what he's done. It's just the connections really compared to horses of the same sort of similar ilk. He's probably a little bit far more exposed in a way than a lot of them. But Poneros 11-1, he really got. I was at Nottingham the day that he won and was transfixed on him. He's a very striking looking son of Golden Horn. He's actually the first, I think he's one of the first horses back with Rafe Beckett since the quite well publicised split between Amo and the trainer. So he's back Rafe is back in the good books, but we know that sometimes doesn't last that long. But Poneros is a nice type and a horse that Rafe does very well with as well. I've got a lot of time for him completely, and I'd be with TC. Just out of interest, there's another one in here, TC, maybe just ask you because you didn't mention King's Gambit, just with that form line with Bracken's Laugh. And I found it difficult not to have him on top of my list, but the form looks good, especially what happened to Bracken's Laugh in the Chester Derby trial. And he had to do that with a penalty running just second to him at this track. So he looks like a nice horse, not badly handicapped. Is there any reason why we shouldn't be keeping him in part of it?
No. Again, he's another one that could definitely play a part in the finish. He's representing the Charltons, who have done quite well with their horses early in the season and have done notoriously well in this race in the past. I have no real downside. However, when I was looking at this race on Wednesday afternoon, we are filming on Thursday, he was actually the favourite, not Shanti. So I wanted to look slightly at a bigger price for more value. Now he's drifting out to around I think 5-1 or 9-2, and he is becoming more like a bet, but I just think the value on Poneros is there.
Yeah, okay. We've got value in this race. That's what makes this really fun. 11-1 on SBK for Poneros. I'm with you, TC. I quite like Goodwood Odyssey against Ross's horse, Brioni. I think he won like a talented sort. I was at Kempton when he was second to Jayash. Thought he did very well in his comeback run. A striking son of Ulysses. He got into all sorts of trouble and powered home at Sandown, his first start over this trip. Well, this is, I think he's got a lot of upsides and he's got a nice rating of 90, but not as nice a rating as Poneros at 88. So these are real horses for the future. We'll probably see a lot of them in the likes of Royal Ascot and competing in better races than this in due course. And as TC has rightly mentioned, this has gone to some Group 1 winners going forward, the likes of Time Test and Baybridge a few years ago. So that is the London Gold Cup, and as I said, there is the chance of winning a bit bigger with this one, as SBK are offering a 25% winnings boost with a max bet of £10. So looking forward to that. And before we go on to Naps and Next Best, that we do have a quite exciting same race Acca from SBK, and Ross and TC, and myself, we've all gone for a different selection. But if you like any of them, you have the opportunity to combine the selections that you've gone for in a double. So if you think Inspiral will win and Charon will place, then you can combine them. So just check out SBK's app and click on the same race Acca tab on whichever race you want, because I think that's the prime opportunity to use that kind of offer, as it's difficult to really separate them. And as we've pointed out, we're not mad on, not all three of us aren't mad on one. So it'll be a fascinating contest. Right, okay, a great day on Saturday outside of just the Lockinge and the London Gold Cup. So, TC, probably because this is one of the days that you really savour and you look forward to, and they're probably horses that you've been waiting for. I'll come to you first for your Nap and Next Best selection.
Yeah, unfortunately, my next best that I was planning on putting up wasn't entered. So I did have a really strong nap and Next Best double. You'll understand what I've done with the Next Best in a minute. But the Nap is a horse called Ejabaya in the 5:15 at Newbury. This filly's a daughter of Frankel. out of an Australian mare called Estejab, who won the Golden Slipper as a 2-year-old. That shows that there is not only talent, with obviously Frankel and a Group 1 winner, not only precocity from two horses that did very well at 2, but you've also got a mixture of stamina and speed in the pedigree. She is fantastically bred, and she could really thrive over all kinds of trips this year. She's had one start for Roger Varian. That came at Kempton. I was there that day back in November. She was ridden just in behind the speed. And yeah, it probably wasn't the best of novice events, but she was sent off at 6-1. So there were other horses in there that were highly regarded from leading stables. She used the cutaway, which is a bugbear of mine. Now, I know there's a lot of ground that opens up there. And if you're on the rail, it saves, possible interference of going out wide. But it's slower. The inside at Kempton is slower. And horses that go up there and can make up considerable ground are worth following. She blitzed the field with a huge turn of foot, really just romping clear and winning by 6 lengths. The race hasn't turned out to be fantastic, but the runner-up is subsequently placed at listed level, giving the form a strong boost. She returns in this race at Newbury after a layoff. I think she could be a proper filly, like a Group 1, Group 2 filly. Fingers crossed anyway she is, because Edgebuyer will be a good bet in this race for me, the 5:15 at Newbury. The next best, as I say, my main fancy for the next best role has been taken out. So I'm going to stick with the horse we've already mentioned, and that is Poneros. I just think his mark of 88 is very fair in the London Gold Cup, the 3 o'clock at Newbury. Hopefully he can hit the frame and provide a good each-way play, but the nap is definitely Edgebuyer in the 5:15.
Yeah, and if you want to play the place play, the markets will be on SBK. I think we've got a lot of those available for us with the prices that we have on offer. So thanks for that. Yeah, definitely like that filly as well. So I'll be coming to that in a bit. Okay, Ross, what do you like for your Napa next best?
So Napa and next best both on the flat, Jess, because I got your angrily worded email. The nap is in the 150 from Newbury, and it's Desert Hero. I thought it was a really good return in the Gordon Richard Stakes over 1 mile and 2, which is probably an adequate trip. He was quite gassy early, which you can understand on his first start of the season, and I thought stuck to it really well. But I was really taken afterwards that Maureen Haggis was pretty keen to get across, that he was going to step forward considerably for that outing, steps back to a more optimal trip. I think is optimum ground. And I'm not sure, even though he had a very good season last year, that we've still seen the best of him. He won his Group 3 at Goodwood and then was third in the St. Ledger. But on both occasions, had to wait for a gap. Tom Marquand didn't go where he wanted to go when he wanted to go. There's no doubt in my mind he wouldn't have beaten Continuous in the St. Ledger. I'm not for a second suggesting that. But I do think he would have got closer, and I do think he would have been more impressive at Goodwood if he'd have been able to go where he wanted to go. So I think there's every chance he'll make up into a better 4-year-old. This didn't look the deepest of race, I don't think. It's only a Group 3. He doesn't get any penalties. He's 9-4 with SBK. I thought that was an outstandingly good price in a very winnable race. And then my next best comes in the 205 at Newmarket. It's Richard Hannon trained Serene Seraph. She was a filly I really liked last year. She progressed with every run. Particularly good when second behind Skellett at Salisbury. Skellett's now rated 105. Serene Seraph then went to Newbury and bolted up and was sent off a pretty warm favourite for a listed contest in November. She ran really poorly, but it was November, it was heavy ground. I never need much reason to give a horse an excuse, let alone a filly on heavy ground in November when they're just 2 years of age. She's better than a mark of 89. Alex Focancy takes off another £3. I think she's a filly to follow through the season. As long as she's ready to go here, I think she's a really good price at 11-2. And then just one other one I'm going to flag up because he was in my tracker and all set to mention him on the handicap moves and shakers, but we didn't cover him because it was a week where I didn't do it because it was Aintree week. And it's Caracoy for Robbie Llewellyn. 68 rated horse on the flat for the Charltons, including winning a novice over 10 furlongs on good to firm at Chepstow. I think it's fair to say it's taken a while to get to grips with National Hunt racing, a slower tempo and jumping. But he's by Golden Horn, sire, absolutely love. They're definitely better on better ground. He's got in here off 10 stone 2 with his age allowance. Liam Harrison riding, I think he's a brilliant rider. I was quite surprised to see that he didn't get given the Fergal O'Brien job when Paddy Brennan retired. Really good talented rider, £8 age allowance. He's rated a handful of pounds more over hurdles than he is on the flat. He could be absolutely chucked in against his flat mark. So he was just one that would have been flagged in Miller's Movers, but we covered Aintree instead. So I wanted to mention him here. He runs in the 650 at Bangor.
And here was me thinking that you were about to say your tracker for the flat horses. Oh, Ross, you're doing so well. He can't help
Something for
himself.
everybody.
No, we love it. We love it, and Robbie Llewellyn deserves that. He's had a fabulous season, and obviously he'll be trying to keep busy over the summer months as well, to keep up that momentum. So thank you to that for Ross. I will just finish it up by adding my sentiments around Edge Behar, as TC has mentioned in that final race at Newbury. I think her form isn't too bad. She's beaten a horse who I think is rated pretty highly now, but she smashed that horse by 6 lengths. She's clearly a horse, as TC said, with fascinating pedigree, a really lovely blend of both sides of the world, and I'll be interested to see, especially if it does dry out a little bit, how she gets on in what is a deep race. But I think she might just be the class angle on that. The other horse is my next best in the 215, the 225, I should say, the Carnarvon Stakes, the 3-year-old race that you will remember Shaquille won last year, and I think this was the day that we really started to prick our ears at Shaquille, and we thought, oh, this horse could be quite special. Now, there are some horses coming from handicaps into this listed event for the first time. I do think back in Stakes Company, James Delight is of note, but I'm just quite curious as to how Pocklington will get on. I think this horse, who's trained by Jeff Oldroyd, he's bred by the owners Bond Thoroughbreds, who had the Damn Ladies of Forever, who was a high class horse, and this horse just could be anything. But when you beat a horse of Army Ethos's quality, who's rated 106 by 1 1/4 lengths, you've got to be all right. And maybe he might just go a little bit under the radar, a bit like Shaquille did, because he's not trained by someone who has, bucket loads of these types of horses. But they tried to run him in a handicap. I saw he was entered up at Newmarket a couple of weeks ago, but he wasn't actually he wasn't able to run because the conditions of the race meant that he wasn't eligible for it. So they're throwing him in this listed contest. He could be anything, and I think he's shown to be pretty much above average anyway. So Pocklington hopefully will be a fair price for this, because we just don't know what we have yet. So that is it. A great day at Newbury, all in all, on Saturday. Looking forward to being there, and hoping that the Lockinge gives us something to celebrate, and that London Gold Cup will be something that we can look forward to going forward. And don't forget, again, as I said, SBK with a great offer of 25% winnings boost on the London Gold Cup. And you just head to SBK for lots of other promotions throughout the weekend. But for now, I hope you enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you soon.